This video is about Europe's journey through conflict to collaboration. Subscribe for more. In the shadow of the crumbling Berlin Wall, whispers of the past echoed through the cold, damp air. It was 1989, a year marked by upheaval and transformation, but even among these hopeful vibrations, the specters of war loomed large. Karl M. Müller, a German historian with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths, stood at the edge of a bustling gathering. His dark eyes, framed by round glasses, scanned the crowd, searching for a familiar face. The reunification of Germany offered both promise and peril, but within it lay a mystery that had haunted Europe for decades. Across the Atlantic, in Washington, D.C., Agent Rebecca Carter of the CIA reviewed classified files from a dimly lit office. A rising star in the agency, Rebecca had earned her reputation by navigating the complex landscape of international relations. Yet, the files in front of her did not merely concern espionage or security. They were a deep dive into a series of unexplained events surrounding Europe's post-war reconstruction. The USA had positioned itself as a guiding force, yet something sinister seemed to lurk beneath the surface. In Tel Aviv, Israel, the air hummed with anticipation. Yossi Levy, an intelligence officer with a penchant for tackling difficult truths, received a cryptic message from his superiors. It mentioned an ancient document, an artifact believed to hold secrets about wartime alliances and betrayals that could shape modern geopolitics. Yossi's eyes narrowed as he considered the implications of this discovery, especially in the volatile climate of the Middle East. The stage was set for the convergence of these three pivotal characters, each wielding knowledge and secrets that could alter their nation's futures. Within the historic streets of Berlin, Karl was determined to unveil the truth behind the German reparations that had been entwined with American interests. He believed that the answers lay in a series of meetings held in the shadows of government buildings, meetings that had never been disclosed to the public. Dark secrets could destabilize a fragile peace that had been painstakingly crafted. As night descended, Karl slipped into an underground cafe, a hub for exiles, scholars, and former spies. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls as he joined a group of historians discussing the implications of the European economic community. Yet another topic simmered beneath their surface chatter, the role of the USA in manipulating post-war Europe. Karl knew that the truth could shatter the carefully constructed narrative of unity that had emerged from the ashes of World War II. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Rebecca pored over the same files, her brow furrowing at what appeared to be a series of clandestine operations labeled as Project Iron Hand. The documents were riddled with references to high-ranking officials in Berlin and Washington, all conspiring to keep certain truths hidden from their citizens. What had started as a mission to rebuild Europe had morphed into a web of deception that stretched from Berlin to Washington and even into Tel Aviv. With each passing day, Rebecca felt the urgency magnify. She had seen the chaos that could erupt from a spill of information. The Middle East was already teetering on a brink of conflict. The last thing the world needed was another war driven by lies, especially one involving the very nations that had fought to restore peace. Meanwhile, Yossi, driven by a mix of national duty and personal ambition, set off for a remote Israeli archive rumored to house the ancient document. He navigated through dusty shelves, each one bursting with stories of betrayal and courage. As he sifted through worn manuscripts, the weight of history pressed upon him. What if this document revealed a connection between Israel and Germany that could shift alliances? He knew it could be crucial for both governments, but also dangerous if the wrong hands got involved. The past began to intertwine when Karl received an anonymous tip linking the document in Israel to the meetings he had uncovered. The implications were clear. The secrets of the past were not just historical footnotes. They were living entities capable of igniting new conflicts. He needed to reach Yossi before the revelations fell into the wrong hands. Fueled by a sense of urgency, Karl picked up his phone and dialed an encrypted number, hoping for a connection that could change everything. Rebecca's phone buzzed as an alert flashed on her screen. The coded message from an informant stated that a historian in Berlin had stumbled upon a conspiracy that connected the CIA's operations in Europe with long-hidden Nazi collaborations. The implications of this revelation threatened to unravel everything that the US had built since the war's end. She felt a cold shiver run down her spine. If this information went public, the fallout could spark protests across Europe, destabilizing the continent once again. With no time to waste, Rebecca packed her bag and booked a flight to Berlin. She needed to intercept Karl before the secrets he was unearthing found their way into the wrong hands. The stakes were becoming personal. Her family had faced the repercussions of past conflicts, and she was determined to protect the fragile peace her mother fought for. As Yossi translated the fragile pages of the document, his heart raced. The ink revealed a series of names linking key Israeli officials with German counterparts in discussions about arms and technology. What had initially seemed like a simple historical artifact now appeared to be a ticking time bomb of information. If made public, the consequences could be devastating, not just for Israel, but for the entire fabric of European alliances. Just when he thought he had pieced together the puzzle, a shadow moved across the room, causing his heart to race. A figure emerged from the dark corner, cloaked in secrecy. It was a man with a stern expression, a briefcase in hand, and a look that screamed danger. "You've found something you shouldn't have," he whispered, his voice low and threatening. Yossi's instincts kicked in as he realized he had become part of a larger, more sinister game. In Berlin, Karl met an old friend who had access to classified materials. They sat in a dimly lit room, poring over documents that suggested the USA had been manipulating European economies to ensure their dominance. As the pieces fell into place, Karl's excitement turned to dread. This was more than just history. This was an active conspiracy threatening the stability of Europe. With the clock ticking, Karl's phone buzzed. It was a message from Rebecca, urging him to meet at a cafe near the Brandenburg Gate. They needed to discuss the findings before others could get involved. His resolve solidified. He would not back down. He ran through the cold streets of Berlin, each step echoing the weight of history pressing upon him. As they met under the glow of streetlights, they were unaware that Yossi was also racing against time, intent on uncovering the truth before it could be buried once more. The intertwining paths of these three individuals were about to collide, setting off a chain reaction that would challenge the very foundations of trust and collaboration built since the ruins of war. The secrets they unearthed would push them to their limits, challenging their loyalties and forcing them to confront the darkness of their nation's pasts. Together, they embarked on a journey into a labyrinth of deception, where every revelation came with a price. In that moment, as the world around them buzzed with the sounds of change, they were unaware of the storm brewing in the shadows. The question hung heavily in the air: would the truth unite them, or would it tear their worlds apart forever? As Karl approached the cafe near the Brandenburg Gate, the chill of the night air seeped into his bones. The cobblestone streets glistened with the remnants of a recent rain, reflecting the pale glow of streetlights as he stepped inside. The warm ambience contrasted sharply with the urgency bubbling inside him. He scanned the small, crowded space, searching for Rebecca's familiar face. Seated at a corner table, Rebecca noticed him immediately. Her expression was a mixture of determination and apprehension. As he joined her, she wasted no time. "Karl, we have to move quickly. I received alarming intel about Project Iron Hand. It is bigger than we thought." Karl leaned in, lowering his voice. "I discovered that the USA's involvement in post-war Europe was more than just about reconstruction. There are links to former Nazi officials, and they go beyond mere collaboration. This could explain the manipulation of European economies." Rebecca's eyes widened. "You're saying the USA was in cahoots with these officials? That is a dangerous revelation, Karl. If this gets out, it could destabilize Europe and reignite old tensions. We need to be careful." "That is why I wanted to meet," he replied, glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping in their SMR. "I received a tip linking the document Yossi is after to these meetings. We need to find him before he uncovers too much." Just then, Rebecca's phone buzzed again. Another encrypted message flashed on the screen. "Yossi has made progress on the document," she whispered, her brow furrowing. "If the wrong people find him, we could lose everything." Karl's got twisted. "I'll reach out to him. He has to know he is in danger. But we need a plan." As he spoke, a figure outside the cafe caught his eye. A man in a dark trench coat, lurking in the shadows, seemed to be watching them. Karl's pulse quickened. "Rebecca, I think we're being followed." They exchanged a knowing glance, both understanding the stakes. They had stumbled into a game where not only their lives but the destinies of their nations were at risk. Karl quickly texted Yossi, urging him to stay low. He hoped the historian was smart enough to heed the warning. Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, Yossi's heart raced as the man with the briefcase loomed over him, a dangerous presence in the small archive room. "You've uncovered something, haven to you," the stranger demanded, his voice a low hiss. "You need to understand the consequences of your discovery." "Then what do you want?" Yossi retorted, trying to mask his fear. He had little doubt that the man was not someone to be trifled with. "Is someone who wishes to preserve the status quo," the man replied, stepping closer, the briefcase clutched tightly in his grip. "You remeddling in affairs that could dismantle alliances, ignite conflicts, let it go." Yossi's mind raced. He couldn't simply abandon the truth. I cannot ignore what I've found. If this links Israel to Germany's past actions, it could change everything. The man's lips curled into a sinister smile. You don't understand, do you? Some truths are buried for a reason. Consider your next move wisely. With that, he turned abruptly and left the room, leaving Yossi shaken and alone. As he caught his breath, Yossi quickly realized the weight of the document pressed against the table. He had to move before he became a target. Instinctively, he grabbed the fragile pages and stuffed them into his bag. He didn't need to meet with Karl and Rebecca together. They could make sense of the chaos. In Berlin, Karl and Rebecca exited the cafe, their minds racing with plans and possibilities. We need to find a secure place to regroup, Rebecca suggested, glancing over her shoulder. If there are people watching us, we have to be smart about this. Karl nodded, his thoughts already spinning. The old museum near Checkpoint Charlie, he proposed. It is relatively quiet and has some hidden areas where we can talk without being overheard. They made their way through the iconic streets, the sights and sounds of Berlin wrapping around them like a thick blanket of history. As they walked, they exchanged snippets of what they each had uncovered. The deeper they delved into their research, the more intertwined their stories became, revealing a tapestry of alliances and betrayals. Arriving at the museum, they slipped inside, quickly moving to a secluded alcove. Once they were settled, Rebecca pulled out her laptop. I need to break down the data on Project Ironhand. If it is tied to the document Joss says after, we'll need to know what we were dealing with. As she worked, Karl felt a sense of urgency growing within him. We need to establish a way to contact Yossi. If he is being chased, he may need our help sooner than we think. Rebecca looked up, her expression grave. Use payphones, coded messages. Until we know we be safe, we can't take any chances. Meanwhile, Yossi navigated through the dark streets of Tel Aviv, replaying the stranger's words in his mind. He needed to inform Karl and Rebecca about the danger he was in. Reaching a secluded corner, he pulled out his phone and began typing a message, hoping they would receive it in time. As he pressed send, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking his path. Yossi's heart sank. It was the man from the archive. I warned you, the man said, his voice cold as ice. You re in over your head. Yossi's instincts kicked in. He had to escape, but the man was closing in. I am not afraid of you. I'll find the truth, no matter the cost. With a sudden burst of energy, he darted past the man, sprinting down the alley, his heart pounding in his chest. Back in Berlin, Karl's phone buzzed. The message from Yossi appeared on the screen. In danger. Need to meet. Trust no one. The urgency of it sent a chill down his spine. What did he say? Rebecca asked, leaning over to see the screen. He is in danger. We need to find him. Now, Karl replied, adrenaline surging through him. The threads of their lives were weaving tighter together, each revelation pulling them deeper into a conflict that spanned generations. They rushed out of the museum, hearts racing. As they navigated the streets, they were unaware of the dark figure observing them from a distance, a sinister smile creeping across his face. The stakes had risen considerably, and the game of secrets was spiraling toward a climax that none of them could foresee. Would they be able to piece together the tangled web of history before it consumed them all? The answers lay ahead, shrouded in shadows and waiting to be unearthed. With urgency propelling them forward, Karl and Rebecca navigated the dimly lit streets of Berlin, their breaths visible in the chilly air. The late-night silence was punctuated only by the distant sounds of music and chatter from nearby bars, a stark contrast to the tension that gripped them. They had to reach Yossi before the darkness enveloped him entirely. Rebecca said, glancing uneasily over her shoulder. Karl shook his head, pushing down the mounting fear. We can't let paranoia stop us. Yossi is our only link to the document. We have to trust ELL, be careful. They arrived at the payphone, its flickering light casting erratic shadows. Karl fished out a coin from his pocket, inserting it into the slot as he dialed the number they had agreed upon. With each ring, his heart raced. Come on, Yossi, pick up, he muttered under his breath. As the line clicked, he was met with silence, followed by an unsettling static. Yossi, he called, desperation creeping into his voice. Are you there? But all he heard was the eerie echo of his voice bouncing back. He slammed the receiver down in frustration. He is not answering. Something is wrong. Rebecca clenched her fists. We have to get to him. Let us retrace his steps. He was last near the archives. Their feet moved with a sense of purpose, quickening toward the historic center of Tel Aviv, where an intricate labyrinth of streets twisted and turned, each corner steeped in secrets. As they arrived at the archive, their eyes were drawn to the heavy iron doors, ominously ajar. "Yossi!" Carl shouted, urgency piercing through the air. They charged inside, scanning the dimly lit room. Dust motes danced in the beams of moonlight filtering through the windows, illuminating bookshelves that held generations of stories. Rebecca called again, her voice echoing against the stone walls. "Where are you?" As their search continued, a chill filled the air, settling deep in their bones. In a far corner of the room, a faint sound drew their attention, a shuffling noise, followed by a subdued gasp. Carl and Rebecca moved toward the source, hearts pounding. Suddenly, they spotted Yossi crouched on the floor, clutching a bag tightly against his chest. His face was pale, fear etched across his features. "You shouldn't have come here," he warned, glancing nervously around the room. "What happened?" Rebecca asked, kneeling beside him. "Did someone follow you?" Yossi nodded, breathless. "I was just about to leave when I saw him, the man from the archive. He knows about the document. He threatened me." "What did he say?" Carl pressed, urgency lacing his voice. "Something about preserving the status quo," Yossi replied, his voice trembling. Rebecca's eyes darkened. "Then we were running out of time. We need to decipher what is in that document before anyone else gets involved." She pulled out her laptop, the screen lighting up the dimness of the archive. "If we can link the names in the document to projectile in hand, we might understand the extent of the manipulation." Yossi opened his bag, revealing the fragile pages of the ancient manuscript. "Here it is," he said, spreading the documents out before them. As Carl leaned in, the ink-stained words began to unfurl secrets that could change the dynamics of power in Europe. With each line they translated, the connections became clearer. Israeli officials negotiating arms and technology with former Nazi sympathizers in Germany. A chilling realization washed over them. The legacy of World War II was not just a historical artifact, but a living, breathing entity that had twisted and turned into a web of deceit. This could explain why the US sought to keep these alliances hidden, Carl murmured, piecing together the implications. Rebecca's fingers flew across the keyboard as she typed notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. If this information leaks, it wouldn't just destabilize Europe, it could reignite hostilities that many thought were resolved. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the archive, making them jump. Yossi's eyes widened. "We were not alone." The three of them instinctively huddled together, searching for a place to hide. They ducked behind a row of old bookshelves just as the heavy footsteps approached. A figure emerged from the entrance, silhouetted against the light. The man in the dark trench coat stepped into the room, a sinister smile creeping across his face. "You really shouldn't have gotten involved," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "You were about to learn a lesson about the consequences of digging into the past." "A hurry," Carl whispered urgently to Rebecca and Yossi as he reached for a nearby book. They needed a distraction. As the man approached, he reached for the bag on the floor, where the document lay. In a swift motion, Carl held the book toward a far wall, where it crashed against the shelves, sending dust and papers flying. The man turned, startled, and in that moment of distraction, they bolted for the back exit. "Keep moving," Yossi urged, adrenaline pumping through his veins. They dashed through the archive, the sound of their footsteps echoing behind them. The man's voice called out, laced with fury, "You think you could escape the truth?" Reaching the outside, they raced down the alley, hearts pounding like war drums. "We have to split up," Rebecca said, panting heavily. The streets of Tel Aviv blurred as they took separate paths, each feeling the weight of history pressing upon their shoulders. As Carl sprinted through the chaos, thoughts consumed him. They were now caught in a dangerous game, where the past could easily become the present. Meanwhile, back in Berlin, a shadow loomed larger than before. The man in the trench coat had his own agenda, one that would not just threaten them but could reshape the very fabric of European history. He had allies in high places, and the stakes were rising. In the coming days, every revelation would bring them closer to the truth and further into peril. Would they manage to expose the conspiracy before it engulfed them? The echoes of war were still alive, and the battle lines were being drawn once more. In the silence of the night, the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, a reminder that they weren't alone in their quest. The secrets of the past were alive, and they were about to discover that some truths are better left buried. With time running out, they had to stay one step ahead or risk being consumed by the very shadows they sought to illuminate. As they disappeared into the night, uncertainty loomed large. What awaited them in the shadows of history, the ancient document, the truths behind Project in Hand, and the lurking figure who threatened to unleash chaos. In the heart of Europe, the next chapter of their journey was about to unfold. The narrow alleys of Tel Aviv twisted beneath the moonlight as Yossi ran, each heartbeat drumming a warning against the chaos that threatened to engulf him. He rounded a corner, panting, the weight of history pressing upon him alongside the fragile document clutched tightly in his bag. With each stride, he felt the shadow of the man in the trench coat trailing behind, a constant reminder that he was not just racing against time but against unseen forces intent on preserving a past charted in deception. His mind raced with thoughts of Carl and Rebecca. Had they escaped? Were they already en route to the safe house? He needed to regroup with them, to share what he had uncovered, but every glance over his shoulder turned his stomach into knots. The city, once a sanctuary of history and hope, had transformed into a labyrinth of danger. Approaching a nondescript building near the old train station, Yossi glanced cautiously around before slipping through the door. The interior was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of old books and dust. He moved deeper into the shadows, searching for a safe corner to catch his breath. As he leaned against the wall, he felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. The document everything rested upon its fragile pages. It had the power to expose alliances that had long been hidden, alliances that could unravel the fabric of both Israeli and German political landscapes. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Karl and Rebecca had reached the safe house, a modest apartment tucked between two towering structures, a remnant of the old world, a stark contrast to modernity. The atmosphere buzzed with tension as they entered, the door creaking softly behind them. "We need to lay low for a bit," Rebecca urged, her voice barely above a whisper. "If the man from the archive is connected to Project Iron Hand, we can risk being found." "They're right," Karl replied, scanning the small living room. "But we need to get ahead of this. If the document truly links Israel and Germany to secret dealings, it is not just a threat to us, it is a potential explosion in Europe." Rebecca nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she began to compile the information they had gathered. "We need to understand the broader implications. If the US is involved, they won't be happy with us digging into their past. It could lead to serious repercussions." As they worked, a tense silence settled between them. Outside, the sounds of the city were muffled, but within, the walls seemed to pulse with the weight of their discoveries. The air was thick with unspoken fears, the shadows of history whispering warnings in their ears. Back in Tel Aviv, Yossi paced the small room, the document weighing heavily in his hands. He had to decode its secrets, but more than that, he had to be ready for what lay ahead. Just then, his phone buzzed a message from Carl. "Meet us at the designated location as soon as you can. We need to go over everything." Relief washed over Yossi, but the urgency of the situation quickly returned. He knew he had to make the trip, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. With determination, he tucked the document back into his bag and slipped out of the building, moving cautiously through the alleys. He felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, the past and present colliding in a way that could lead to a resurgence of tensions between nations that had fought so hard for peace. Truth was a volatile weapon, and he was its unwitting bearer. As he made his way toward the meeting point, Yossi's instincts kicked in. He spotted a figure in the distance, a silhouette lingering near a corner, watching. Adrenaline surged through him, and he changed direction, ducking into a narrow lane that led to a back street. The footsteps behind him quickened, and he could feel the distance closing. He had to lose them. The alley opened into a market square, bustling with life. Yossi moved through the throngs of people, blending in as best he could. He dodged stalls brimming with spices, textiles, and the aroma of fresh bread, using the crowd as an effective cover. He couldn't see the man, but he could feel the weight of his gaze, the knowledge that danger was lurking just beyond sight. Meanwhile, in the safe house, Carl and Rebecca pored over the document Yossi had acquired. "Look at these names," Rebecca said, pointing at the pages spread before them. "They were not just historical figures, they were connected to current leaders. If we can draw a line from them to the CIA and its operations in Europe, we can prove that this manipulation wasn't just a post-war necessity, it was a strategy for control." "Exactly," Carl said, tracing the ink with his finger. "These ties could expose the foundation on which the European Union was built. If the public knew, it would shatter trust in governments across the continent." Just then, a loud knock on the door interrupted them. They exchanged panicked glances, fear gripping them. Rebecca called, her voice laced with urgency. "Open up, we know you're in there." It came a gruff voice from the other side. "Stay quiet," Carl whispered, moving toward the window. They needed to assess the situation quickly. The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface now erupted into pure adrenaline. They had to protect the information at all costs. As Yossi finally reached the designated meeting point, he felt a surge of hope. But the moment was short-lived. The man from the archive appeared before him, blocking the entrance. "You've come too far," he said, his eyes dark with malice. "You need to understand that some knowledge is too dangerous to bear." Yossi held his ground, adrenaline pumping through him. "The truth needs to come out." "It does it." The man's smile was chilling. "What if revealing the truth leads to chaos? What if it ignites wars that will consume everything? I'd rather face that than live in ignorance," Yossi replied defiantly. "The past exists for a reason, and it is time people know the truth." With that, he made a move to sidestep the man, but the figure lunged, grabbing Yossi's arm. In the struggle, Yossi's bag tore open, and the fragile document slipped free, fluttering to the ground. The man froze, eyes widening as he realized the weight of what lay exposed before him. He hissed, reaching to snatch the pages. But Yossi was quicker. With a surge of energy, he pushed past the man, darting into the street. He didn't stop running until he reached the safe house, bursting through the door without knocking. Carl and Rebecca spun around, faces filled with relief and concern. "Yossi," they shouted, rushing to his side. Yossi quickly recounted the encounter, his breath heavy. "He knows about the document. We need to act fast before he gets word to others." Rebecca turned back to her laptop, fingers flying over the keys as she pulled up files related to the names from the document. "Let us get this information compiled. If we can connect the dots and release it to the public, we might expose this entire conspiracy before it is too late." With time slipping through their fingers, the three of them worked through the night, piecing together the fragments of history. As dawn broke over Berlin, illuminating the room with a soft glow, they finally assembled the information that linked former Nazi officials to covert CIA operations, revealing how the past had been manipulated to shape the future of Europe. The moment of confrontation loomed. They knew there would be fallout, but they had no intention of retreating. The truth, they believed, was stronger than any shadow of deception. They prepared to leak the information to the press, their hearts racing with both fear and determination. As they hit send, a silence enveloped the room, the weight of their actions settling upon them like a heavy mantle. The past had been unearthed, and with it, they had opened the floodgates to a truth that could reshape alliances and perceptions across nations. In the days that followed, the world reacted. Protests erupted, governments scrambled to respond, and the echoes of history reverberated throughout Europe. While the chaos unfolded, Carl, Yossi, and Rebecca remained vigilant, aware that their journey was far from over. They had ignited a spark, a movement towards accountability, and the shadows that once loomed over their lives were now filled with the light of revelations. Together, they stepped into a new dawn, united by their shared mission to confront the past and ensure that history would not repeat itself. As they watched the world change around them, they understood that every truth unearthed was not just a piece of history, but a step toward a future built on transparency, trust, and collaboration. In their hearts, they carried the hope that this was not merely a chapter of conflict, but the beginning of a new era, a testament that even from the ashes of war, unity could rise.